When I unwrapped my Father's Day gift, I found my own will inside. The wrapping paper crackled in my hands louder than it should have, like it wanted the whole room to hear. My son, Daniel, sat across from me, his elbows propped on the table, fingers drumming softly, rhythmically, too steady to be casual. He was smiling, yes, but the corners of his eyes didn't crease. It was a smile without warmth, a smile that pressed against me like a warning. Everyone else laughed, clapping along, forks scraping against china, glasses clinking. The air smelled of roasted meat, cinnamon from the apple pie my wife baked, and something metallic, like iron, sharp and faint, sliding under everything. Maybe it was only in my head, but it cut through me all the same. "Open it, Dad," Daniel urged. His voice carried an edge of cheer, but beneath it, I caught a note I couldn't place, too rehearsed, too smooth. My chest tightened as I tore the last of the paper away. Inside was a black folder. My name embossed across the front in clean silver letters. My pulse stumbled. My throat went dry. My fingers traced the letters without meaning to, as if I was confirming what I already knew. It was my will. Not a card. Not a tie. Not some cheesy mug that said "World's Best Dad." My will. For a second, I thought I'd laugh. Pretend it was some kind of tasteless joke. But the room spun differently now. The clinking silverware sounded like knives on bone. My wife's fork froze halfway to her lips, her face strained of color. Daniel's grin stretched wider, like he had already won something and I hadn't even realized we were playing. I cleared my throat, forcing a chuckle that tasted bitter. "Well, that's certainly creative." I tried to sound amused, like the gift hadn't cut me open from the inside. "Where did you get this?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Casual, too casual. I thought it'd be useful. You know, to remind you how valuable life is. None of us are here forever." His words were light, but his eyes didn't blink. They drilled into me, waiting for my reaction. Inside my head, questions screamed. How did he get this? Did he break into my study? Did someone help him? And why today? Why now? I set the folder on the table, careful, as though it might explode. My hands were slick with sweat. "That's thoughtful," I muttered, though it came out more like a groan. Moments like this reveal more than words. Daniel's leg bounced beneath the table, a restless energy he couldn't hide. His jaw tightened before he caught himself and masked it with another smirk. I saw it. I saw the crack in his performance. My wife, Margaret, finally spoke, her voice a whisper that barely carried across the table. "Daniel, this isn't funny." She reached for her wine glass, but her hand trembled so much she nearly spilled it. Where did you even?" "Relax, Mom." Daniel's tone snapped sharper than he meant it to. His smile faltered before snapping back into place. "It's just a joke. Dad gets it." Did I? I wasn't sure. Because when I opened the folder, flipping past the title page, my vision tunneled. The papers inside were crisp, professional. Every page bore my name in bold at the top. And there it was, my signature at the bottom of each one. Perfect. Too perfect. I hadn't signed this. Not all of it. Some pages, yes, I remembered meeting with the lawyer last year. But this version, it was different. Lines I never approved. Provisions I never wrote. And my hand was trembling too hard to keep reading. "What's this line here?" I asked, my voice tight, pointing at a section halfway down the page. This wasn't in the draft I signed." Daniel's eyes flicked down, then up again in an instant. A muscle twitched in his cheek. "Maybe you forgot. You're not exactly young anymore, Dad." The jab stung. More than he realized, or maybe exactly as much as he intended. I looked at him across the table. My son, my blood. But in that moment, I swear I didn't recognize him. His eyes were too cold, his grin too sharp, his voice too calm, like he'd rehearsed this entire dinner in front of a mirror. My wife's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Just silence. The kind of silence that buzzes in your ears, that makes the air feel too thick to breathe. I tried to steady my breath, tried to laugh again, but my voice cracked. "Daniel, why now? Why give me this today?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice so only I could hear, though his lips still held that public smile for everyone else. "Because I wanted you to know, Dad. I know everything." My stomach dropped. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat like a hammer. He knew what? About me? About Margaret? About... The room seemed smaller. The smell of cinnamon turned sour in my nose. I closed the folder slowly, sliding it back into its box, but the words on that page burned into my mind. the words I knew I hadn't written, and that's when I noticed a line in the will I never wrote. The will wasn't mine anymore. Someone had rewritten my future. The words bled together on the page, but one line seared itself into my brain. My house, my business, my savings, all of it left to Daniel. No mention of Margaret. No mention of Emily, my daughter. Just him. As if the rest of my family didn't exist. As if my entire life's work had been stripped away and funneled into his hands. My throat tightened. The room tilted slightly, the chandelier lights above us blurring into harsh halos. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, louder now, mocking in its steady drone. I lifted my head slowly, my eyes finding Daniel's across the table. He was already watching me, his eyes sharp, his lips pressed into a thin smile that didn't stretch far enough. His fingers tapped the table, steady, like a ticking clock counting down. "David?" Margaret's voice quivered. She leaned toward me, her hand brushing my arm. "What is it? What's wrong?" I didn't answer. My mouth felt dry like ash. I wanted to slam the folder shut, throw it across the room, demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. Daniel broke the silence with a laugh that landed too hard. "Oh, don't look so serious, Dad. It's just a joke." A joke. The word hung in the air, sour and heavy. His smile widened again, but I caught it, the twitch in his jaw, the way his shoulders stiffened before he forced them to relax. His performance was slipping, and I was close enough to see the man behind the mask. Margaret frowned. "A joke? Danielle, this isn't funny. How did you even—" He cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Relax, Mom. I just thought it'd get a rise out of Dad. And hey, it worked." But the drumming of his fingers betrayed him. Faster now, more restless. Inside my head, the questions roared louder than my heartbeat. Who had access to my safe? My study was locked, the documents sealed. Did he force it? Did someone help him? And the cruelest thought of all, why would my own son betray me like this? I turned another page, my hand trembling, and there it was again, line after line, reshaped to his advantage. And then my eyes stopped cold. The clause about the business, the handwriting wasn't Daniel's. I knew my son's script. This was smoother, older. Someone else had written this. My chest went tight, heat crawling up my neck. "Daniel," I said slowly, carefully, "did you write this yourself?" He tilted his head, smirk still plastered on, but his eyes flickered. "What, you don't like my penmanship? Don't lie to me." My voice came out harder than I intended. Margaret's chair scraped against the floor as she stood halfway, panic on her face. "Both of you stop." But I leaned forward, my knuckles whitening on the edge of the table. "This isn't your handwriting." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Daniel's grin faltered just slightly, and then he laughed again, too loud, too sharp. "Does it matter? It's not real. Just paper. A prank." But I saw it, the flicker in his eyes, the way his tongue darted over his bottom lip, nervous. He was hiding something, and he knew I knew it. My daughter Emily, who had been silent the whole time, finally whispered, "Dad, maybe you should put it away." Her voice was soft, shaky, like she could sense the storm pressing against the walls. I closed the folder slowly, the paper's edge catching against my palm. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried the weight of every lie in the room. I wanted to explode, to shout, to demand he tell me everything right then and there. But fear gnawed at me, fear of what else he had planned, fear of what it would mean if someone else was involved. Instead, I forced a weak smile. "You're right. Probably nothing. Just surprising." Daniel leaned back again, satisfied with the performance. But I didn't miss the way his shoulders sagged slightly, relieved I wasn't pushing harder. The dinner chatter stumbled back in, Margaret's attempts at small talk brittle, Emily silent, me pretending to chew food that tasted like sawdust. All the while my mind spun. Who wrote it? Why give it to me now? And how long had Daniel been preparing this? The refrigerator hummed, the silverware clinked, and beneath it all, his finger kept tapping. Tap, 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 like a clock counting down. I couldn't escape the thought. This wasn't a joke. This was a message. A warning. Maybe even a threat. And the handwriting on that forged line wasn't even his. It wasn't my son's handwriting. It was Robert's. The moment I saw the curling loops of that signature, my stomach dropped. My boy's writing was sharp, impatient, almost aggressive. But this was smooth, deliberate, smug. I'd know that arrogance anywhere. Robert, my brother. I hadn't spoken his name at this table in years, not since the night he tried to swindle me out of my first business. Even now, the smell of roasted lamb on the table turned rancid in my nose, thick grease coating my throat until I nearly gagged. I set the paper down, careful not to let my fingers tremble. My son was watching me too closely, his smile stretched too tight, his eyes sharp like a blade hidden behind silk. He drummed his fingers against the table, steady, steady, like a metronome ticking away the seconds until I cracked. Inside, memories flooded back. Robert with his hand on my shoulder, promising we'd build everything together. Robert laughing when the bank nearly took my house. Robert standing in court, smirking while I defended myself alone. And now his handwriting, inside my will. Dad? My son said, forcing a lightness that didn't reach his eyes. You look pale. Too much wine? My wife leaned in, concern touching her voice. Are you all right? I swallowed hard. Fine. Just thinking. He tilted his head, feigning innocence. You don't like the gift? My jaw tightened. It's unexpected. His fingers stilled. That small pause told me everything. He wanted a reaction, but not this one. I pushed the paper aside. Where did you get this? He grinned too fast. Online. You know, those novelty shops that do custom documents. Thought it'd be funny. Funny? My voice cracked. Yeah. He chuckled, but the laugh was hollow, brittle around the edges. Just a joke. Don't take it so seriously. My daughter shifted in her seat. That's a sick joke, she muttered. Hey, relax, he shot back, a sharpness creeping into his voice. It's just paper. Dad knows I'm kidding. Right. His eyes drilled into me. For a moment, the air felt heavy, the kind of silence before thunder splits the sky. I forced myself to smile, lips dry. Right. But I saw it then, the flicker. His jaw twitched. He knew I'd noticed. Later, as dishes clinked and my wife carried trays to the sink, I leaned closer to my son. My voice dropped to a whisper. Where did you really get this? He froze, then leaned back in his chair, stretching like he owned the room. Why do you care so much? Because this isn't a joke. Someone touched my safe. His mouth curled at the corner. Maybe you should lock it better. The words sliced through me. Cold sweat prickled my back. And then, just for a second, his mask slipped. His pupils darted to the side, almost instinctively, as if someone else was sitting there. Someone guiding him. Robert. I could almost feel my brother's presence in the room. A shadow coiled behind my son's chair, whispering, pushing, poisoning. I clenched my fists under the table. Did Robert put you up to this? His laugh was sharp, mocking. Robert? You still obsessed with him? He's been gone for years, Dad. But the way he said it, the defensive edge, the too quick dismissal, confirmed everything. I leaned closer, my voice barely audible over the hum of the dishwasher. If he's involved, this isn't a game. He'll ruin you the way he tried to ruin me. For the first time that night, my son's mask cracked. His forced grin faltered. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the table edge. You think you know everything. You don't know me. No. I whispered back, my chest burning. I don't know you anymore. His eyes narrowed, and for an instant I swore I saw Robert in him. Same cruel smirk, same hunger for control. The rest of dinner blurred. The clatter of plates, the murmured conversations, the clink of silverware, it all dissolved under the pounding in my head. Every sound felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. But inside me, one truth screamed louder than anything else. Robert was back. Not in person yet, but in spirit, in strategy, in poison dripping from my own son's mouth. And if Robert was pulling strings, then my son wasn't just reckless. He was being used. Or worse, he was a willing accomplice. And if Robert was involved, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was a trap. Through the door, I heard my son call me weak. I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that feels unnatural, like it's waiting to be broken. The clock in the hallway ticked heavy, each second pressing against my temples. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, but then, voices, low, muffled, coming from my son's room. I sat up, every nerve sharp. He was supposed to be asleep. Instead, I caught the rhythm of his whisper, sharp and deliberate. I crept closer, bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Don't worry, he hissed through the crack of his door. He didn't react. He's too weak. My chest tightened. He was talking about me. I pressed my ear closer, careful not to breathe too loud. Yeah, he whispered again, his tone sliding between fear and arrogance. No, he just laughed it off. Exactly like you said. He'll never fight back. Silence. The faint buzz of a phone line carried through, followed by his nervous laugh. Of course I'm in. I told you, I'll handle it. Trust me. My palms grew damp. He wasn't just in this, he was planning it. With Robert. And then it hit me. Something I hadn't noticed before. A faint, acrid smell curling out from under his door. Smoke. Cigarette smoke. My son never smoked. Robert did. Always. His fingers were never clean, always stained with that stench. The smell slid into my throat, bitter, invasive, and suddenly my home didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt invaded. I stepped back, heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped animal. Rage pressed against my chest, demanding release. I wanted to slam the door open, tear the phone out of his hand, and scream, "How could you?" But I didn't. I froze. My back pressed to the hallway wall, my hands shaking. Because if I stormed in now, he'd know I was listening, and I needed to know more. So I stayed still, listening, memorizing every word. "Yeah, he has no idea about the account," my son said, voice dropping even lower. "It'll be clean. Untouchable." My throat went dry. The account? My mind raced. Did he mean the business account? My savings? Another pause. Then a chuckle. "Relax. I told you. He won't fight. He can't. He's old." Old. The word cut deeper than I expected. Old. Weak. Finished. That's what my own son thought of me. That's what Robert had drilled into him. The floor creaked under my heel, and I froze. For a heartbeat, silence filled the hallway, thick and suffocating. Then his whisper came again. "No, it's nothing. Just the house. Don't worry. I'll call you tomorrow." The bed shifted. The faint click of his phone screen lighting up, then going dark. I heard the slow exhale of smoke and the scrape of the window opening. Cold night air swept through the hall, carrying that poison smell with it. I stepped back quickly, retreating toward my room before he opened the door. Inside my room, I shut the door and leaned against it, my breath ragged. My wife stirred beside me, murmuring in her sleep, unaware of the storm brewing under our roof. I pressed a hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to scream. My son wasn't just being manipulated, he was choosing this, choosing Robert, and for the first time, I felt something I never thought I'd feel toward my own child. Fear. Not of Robert, not anymore, but of what my son was becoming. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone on my nightstand. My fingers hovered over it, shaking. There was one person I swore I'd never involve again, the police. Not after the last time, not after how messy Robert had made things years ago. But now I heard it with my own ears. My son plotting. My son aligning with the man who'd nearly destroyed me once before. And then, just before sleep could even think of claiming me, I heard the last words he muttered in his room. Words that made the air leave my lungs. "Don't worry. By the time he realizes, it'll all be ours. Even Mom won't stand in the way." And then he said something that made me pick up the phone to call the police. The police didn't see the danger. But I did. They stood in my living room, shoes squeaking against the polished wood as though the house itself resisted their presence. Their notepads were out, pens half poised, but their eyes, those weary, disbelieving eyes, told me they were already done with me. I leaned forward, my hands pressed flat on the coffee table. "I'm telling you, something's wrong. The will, it's not just a piece of paper. There's a forgery. And last night," my throat closed up as I thought of my son's voice through the door. That word. Weak. One of the officers, a stocky man with thinning hair, shifted uncomfortably. His jaw tightened as he scribbled something, then looked up with a sigh. "Sir, with respect, you're accusing your own son. Do you have any physical proof? Documents, recordings, anything we can verify?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. The truth stuck like splinters under my tongue. "Not yet," but I heard him. He was whispering on the phone. The younger officer, barely older than my son, raised a brow. His expression was neutral, but his body language screamed impatience. "Kids talk. Arguments happen. Doesn't mean there's a crime." My wife appeared in the doorway, her nightgown clutched around her like fragile armor. Maybe we should just let this go," she said softly. Her voice trembled. Her hands trembled even more, twisting the fabric until it nearly tore. I looked at her, really looked. The pallor in her cheeks, the dart of her eyes toward the stairs. She was afraid, even more than me. And yet, she wanted me silent. "Let it go," I whispered. "You heard him too." She didn't answer. Her silence was the loudest betrayal of all. The stocky officer closed his notebook. "It's just a will, sir. Families fight about money all the time. Unless you can provide us with actual evidence, There's nothing we can do. I felt the heat rise to my face. So you'll wait until something worse happens? Until I end up in a hospital bed, or worse? His lips pressed into a thin line. A practiced expression, the kind officers wear when they've already decided you're wasting their time. The younger one gave a polite nod. If you feel unsafe, you could file for a wellness check. But right now, his voice trailed. He didn't need to finish. His doubt was a blade, clean and sharp. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to drag them upstairs and press their ears against my son's door so they could hear the whispers for themselves. But instead I stood frozen, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the mantel. Every sound felt louder than their fading footsteps. When the doors shut behind them, silence swallowed the house. My chest tightened. I turned to my wife, but she was already walking away, her back rigid, her head bowed. Why won't you admit it? I called after her. My voice cracked. She didn't turn. And then I felt it. The weight of eyes on me. I looked up. There he was. My son stood at the top of the stairs, one hand curled lazily around the banister. His smile unfurled slow, deliberate, like a knife being drawn from its sheath. He leaned forward slightly, his shadow stretching down the wall like a predator's tail. Talking about me again, Dad? His voice was casual, almost amused, but his eyes, those eyes were shards of ice, cold, calculating. He didn't blink. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to look away. You were listening. Of course. He tilted his head, studying me. I always listen. His words slithered through the air, filling the silence the officers had left behind. He tapped his fingers on the wood, a steady rhythm, not nervous, no. Confident, arrogant. I tried to summon anger, to tell him I wasn't afraid. But my body betrayed me. My hand trembled on the arm of the chair, and he saw it. God, he saw it. His smile deepened, savoring my weakness like fine wine. My wife reappeared in the hall, but she didn't look at him, didn't look at me. She slipped past, muttering something about tea, her hands never still. She's scared too, he said quietly, almost kindly. But not of me. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? He chuckled, low and amused, before straightening. You'll figure it out. Then he turned, disappearing into the darkness of the hallway, the floorboards groaning under his retreating steps. I sat there, shaking. The smell of smoke lingered faintly, as if he'd carried Robert's ghost into the house itself. And when I finally dragged myself upstairs later that night, I locked my door for the first time in years. Sleep was a stranger. Fear was the only companion. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, a thin slip of paper rested just inside my door. I bent down, heart pounding, fingers cold. The handwriting was unmistakable. Robert's. Because the next morning, I found a note slipped under my door, in Robert's handwriting. Robert's note promised war. The paper trembled in my hands, though I swear it wasn't from the draft sneaking under the door. The smell hit me first, sharp, bitter, the unmistakable stench of whiskey, soaked into the fibers. My stomach twisted. Robert hadn't just written this. He'd left his scent, his mark, as though daring me to inhale his presence. The words were simple, cruel in their simplicity. You always thought you were smarter. Now your son knows the truth. Soon the world will too. My hands shook harder. The ink smeared where my thumb brushed the page, but the meaning burned itself into my mind. He's here, I muttered. My voice cracked. Even if he's not here, he's here. Behind me, soft footsteps. My wife's voice, fragile as glass. What is it? I turned, holding the note out like a weapon. She took it gingerly, her fingers trembling so badly the paper nearly slipped. Her lips moved silently as she read, then the tears came, sudden, helpless. Please, she whispered, crumpling the paper to her chest. Don't fight him. Don't provoke him. We can survive this if we stay quiet. Quiet? My laugh came out jagged, broken. He's already poisoned him. Look at the words. Your son knows the truth. He's using him. Manipulating him. Do you really think silence will save us? Her eyes darted toward the stairs. She shook her head violently, hair sticking to her damp cheeks. You don't understand. Robert doesn't just take. He makes people believe they wanted it all along. Something inside me froze. Her trembling wasn't just fear of what Robert might do. She'd seen it before. Lived it. Maybe even. Before I could ask, the steady thump of footsteps descended. My son. Headphones wrapped around his neck, faint music bleeding into the silence. He hummed softly, casually, his hands in his hoodie pocket. But his stride faltered the instant his gaze landed on the crumpled note in my wife's hands. His humming stopped. For the briefest second, his face cracked, the mask slipping. Fear. Pure, naked fear. I saw it, and then it was gone, replaced with a roll of his shoulders, an exaggerated yawn. He pulled his hood tighter and muttered, "It's too late now." The words hit like a blade between my ribs. "What do you mean?" My voice rose sharper than I intended. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at her. He brushed past, his shoulder knocking against mine deliberately, like punctuation. "You'll see." I grabbed his arm. Not hard, but enough. His muscles stiffened under my grip. "Tell me what he's done." He turned slowly, his expression blank. Too blank. His eyes, though, they betrayed him. A flicker of guilt, panic, then anger. "You wouldn't understand," he snapped. "You never have. Try me." My words came out low, almost a growl. My pulse thundered in my ears. He leaned in, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of smoke clinging to his clothes. "He told me everything. About you. About what you've hidden." I blinked. The world tilted, the hallway walls pressing in. "What lies has he fed you?" He smirked, but it wasn't his smirk. It was Robert's. A shadow stretched across his face, and for a moment, I saw not my son, but Robert wearing his skin. "You'll find out soon enough," he said, yanking free. He disappeared into his room, the door slamming with a finality that echoed through the house like a gunshot. I stood there, chest heaving, the note still in my wife's hands. She sank into a chair, her tears silent now, her gaze vacant. Every tick of the clock in the hallway sounded like a countdown. I could almost hear Robert's laugh behind it. The smell of whiskey still clung to my fingers. The words etched themselves deeper. "Your son knows the truth." But whose truth? His? Mine? Or the twisted reality Robert had planted? I pressed my hand against the cool wood of my son's door. My palm left a sweat print. I wanted to break it down, drag him into the light, force him to speak. But something inside me warned, not yet. Too soon. Instead, I whispered through the silence, more to myself than to him. "This is war." And I wasn't sure if I had already lost the first battle. And my son had already chosen his side. Every missing file told me my son wasn't acting alone. The first time I noticed, it was almost by accident. A spreadsheet that should have been tucked neatly into my client's folder was gone. At first I thought I'd misplaced it, just an old man forgetting things, right? But no. I knew where I put my files. I could smell the stale ink of the printer still clinging to the paper that should have been there. The room was too quiet, too still, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. That silence pressed against me, daring me to admit the truth. Someone was tampering with my world. I leaned back in my chair, hands trembling. My son. He had access. He had excuses. He had that nervous habit lately, his jaw tightening whenever I mentioned accounts, his voice climbing a little too high when he said everything was fine. "Dad, you worry too much," he told me last week, not meeting my eyes. "I worry exactly as much as I should," I replied, forcing calm. "Seriously, just trust me." Trust. The word felt rotten in his mouth, like he didn't believe it himself. I pulled open the desk drawer, sifting through piles of invoices, receipts, the smell of dust rising with each shuffle. My fingers found creases in the paper, documents folded and unfolded too many times. Altered numbers leapt off the page at me, like bruises under dim light. Tiny changes, a decimal moved here, a signature forged there. My chest tightened. These weren't mistakes, they were lies. The clock ticked past midnight, but my blood was racing too fast for sleep. I started replaying every recent conversation with my son, like running back security footage in my head. His pauses, his stutters, the way his smile faltered when money came up. He wasn't alone. I could feel it. A boy doesn't learn to cheat his own father's books out of nowhere. Someone was teaching him, guiding him, manipulating him, and every instinct in me screamed the same name, Robert. I followed him the next night. The air outside was damp, thick with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt. I kept my headlights off, tailing from far enough back that he wouldn't notice. His car slowed near the edge of town, pulling into a place that hadn't seen paint in a decade. An old bar, the kind where secrets rot under dim neon lights. I killed my engine and watched. My pulse thudded in my ears, each beat louder than the muffled bass leaking from inside the bar. Then I saw it. My son, slouched and restless, walking through the door like he didn't belong. A few minutes later, another figure appeared in the yellowed window light, broad shoulders, the swagger of a man who always thought he was in control. Robert. The bar's neon sign flickered, casting half his face in a ghastly green. Even from across the street, I could see the smirk tugging at his lips. He leaned close to my son, whispering something, his hand gripping the boy's shoulder like a puppeteer anchoring a string. My son didn't pull away. He just sat there, staring at his drink, jaw tight, eyes down. Robert leaned in. "You did good, kid. Just keep him in the dark." My son muttered something, shoulders tense. Robert's laugh was low, sharp. "You're not weak. You're mine now." I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew Robert's mannerisms, the false warmth in his smile, the way his eyes stayed cold even when his voice dripped with charm. And I knew the way my son's leg bounced under the table, nervous, trapped. My nails dug into the steering wheel. Rage burned hotter than fear now. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I was too old, too broken, too tired to fight back. But watching Robert's hand on my son's shoulder, I realized something. This wasn't just betrayal. This was recruitment. He was molding my boy into his pawn. The night air pressed heavy against the windshield, suffocating me, but I couldn't look away. My son wasn't just complicit, he was being trained to destroy me from the inside out. Robert raised his glass, smirking. My son raised his too, reluctantly. The clink of those glasses echoed in my head louder than any gunshot. That was the sound of war. They thought I was weak. They thought I wouldn't fight back. But if they wanted a war, I'd give them one. I stopped grieving and started planning. Grief had turned to steel inside me. The ache of betrayal was still there, but sharper now, something I could wield. My son thought I was broken, Robert thought I was irrelevant, but they hadn't seen what I could do when cornered. The plan had to be perfect, subtle, layered. Every detail mattered. I started with the smallest moves, leaving my phone on the counter while, forgetting to lock it, knowing my son would snoop, planting half-truths in conversations, dropping the wrong numbers in the right places. Every baited hook made him a little bolder, a little louder, his words carrying Robert's arrogance. "You think I don't know what I'm doing?" he snapped one night when I asked about the bank transfer. His eyes darted away too quickly. "I think you're out of your depth," I answered evenly. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. "You'll see. Robert says." He froze, catching himself. His jaw clenched, but the slip was already mine. I started recording everything. My hands shook the first time I hit the red button, the quiet beep sounding louder than a gunshot in the still of my office. But soon it became second nature. His bragging filled my files, his careless boasts stitched together like rope tightening around his neck. The smell of stale coffee became my constant companion. I brewed pot after pot, the bitter scent keeping me awake at 3 in the morning while I copied documents, highlighted discrepancies, matched signatures. My desk was chaos, papers scattered like fallen leaves, but in that chaos I saw the truth. They thought I wouldn't see the pattern. They thought I wouldn't put it together. But every altered number, every missing sheet, every smug word, they were breadcrumbs, and I was following them straight to the heart of their scheme. One night, my wife found me hunched over the desk, the lamp throwing harsh shadows across the papers. She pressed her hand to my shoulder, voice trembling. "Please," she whispered, "stop this. He's still our son." I shook my head, not looking up. "No. He's their weapon now. If I stop, we lose everything." Her voice cracked. "But what if you lose him completely?" I finally looked at her, my throat dry. "I already have." Her tears burned me, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. That's when the idea hit me, the stage. If Robert and my son wanted to perform their charade, I'd give them the perfect theater, a family dinner. Familiar faces, warm lights, food on the table. They'd relax, they'd slip, and this time, there would be witnesses. I pictured it clearly, the clinking of glasses, the faint smell of roast in the air, the soft, golden glow of the chandelier above us. Everyone laughing, everyone pretending things were normal, until I pulled the rug from under their feet. For weeks, I laid the groundwork. I forgot to shred certain documents, knowing Robert's eyes would find them. I left hints that I was losing track, stumbling, becoming weaker. And all the while, my recorder caught everything. His instructions, my son's eager replies, the contempt dripping from their voices when they thought I wasn't listening. Robert's voice, low and smooth. "He's finished. Just keep playing along. My son. Don't worry. He doesn't suspect a thing. Robert. Good. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late." Every word was fuel. Every sneer was another nail in the coffin I was building for them. I started inviting relatives for Christmas dinner weeks ahead, masking it as tradition. "It'll be good to have everyone together again," I told them, keeping my voice warm, steady. Inside, I was cold fire. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought they were scripting my downfall, but I was rewriting the ending. They thought I was the audience, but I was the director. And my dinner table would be their stage. Still, I couldn't ignore the fear curling in my stomach. What if it backfired? What if Robert saw through me? What if my son looked me in the eye and called me out before I could expose him? The thought made my hands sweat. But fear was just another tool. It sharpened me. It kept me awake, pacing the kitchen at night, rehearsing every line in my head. You thought you could break me. You thought you could use my son against me. But you underestimated me. The words tasted bitter, but they steadied me. And so, I prepared the trap. Invitations sent, food ordered, seating planned with precision. Every detail mattered. I would draw them in with warmth, comfort, routine. And when they least expected it, I'd turn their own game against them. And the stage for their downfall was set at our next family dinner. When I finally confronted them, Mark tried to make me look like the villain. The dinner table gleamed under the chandelier, silverware polished, wine glasses catching the golden light, plates of roast and potatoes steamed, the smell of rosemary drifting through the room. From the outside, we looked like a family celebrating the season, but I could hear the cracks in the performance. My son and Robert laughed too loudly, their voices bouncing off the walls like forest echoes, their smiles stretched just a little too wide. I caught the flick of Robert's eyes toward me every time I reached for my glass. My son mirrored him, his posture stiff, his laugh sharp and hollow. They were performing, and I was letting them. I waited until the plates were half empty, until conversation lulled and the hum of the old grandfather clock filled the silence. My hand shook only once before I slammed the table. The dishes rattled. My wife gasped. "What the hell are you doing?" Mark sneered, his fork clattering against his plate. I met his glare. "I'm done pretending." Robert leaned back slowly, a smug grin curling his lips. "Oh? And what exactly are you accusing us of this time?" My hand slid into my jacket. I pulled out the papers, the forged will I had discovered, Robert's handwriting mocking me in black ink. The laughter died. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Only the ticking of the clock carried on, each second a hammer striking stone. Mark's jaw tightened. He scoffed, but his voice carried too much heat. "You've lost it," he said, shaking his head like he pitied me. "You're paranoid. You've always been unstable, and now everyone can see it." I studied him closely. His fingers drummed against the table, too fast. His eyes darted toward Robert before settling back on me. That little crack in his mask was all I needed. They wanted me to fold, to look weak, to second-guess myself. But not tonight. Tonight I had the truth. I leaned forward, lowering my voice until every word dripped into the silence. "Unstable, am I? Then explain this." My phone landed on the table with a heavy thud. I tapped the screen. Robert's voice hissed through the speaker. "Keep him in the dark. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late." Then my son's reply. "Don't worry. He doesn't suspect a thing." Gasps rippled across the table. Forks froze midair. My wife's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Robert muttered a curse under his breath, his grin faltering for the first time. He adjusted his tie, his face slick with sudden sweat. Mark's smile cracked, his voice pitching higher. It's taken out of context." I slammed my hand flat on the table again. "Context? You plotted against me. Together. My son and my oldest enemy." The chandelier's light no longer felt warm. It glared down on us like an interrogation lamp. The air thickened, hard to breathe, as though the walls themselves were closing in. Robert tried to recover, his voice dripping with false calm. "Everyone here knows you've been slipping. Grief makes men do desperate things." His words were smooth, but his leg bounced under the table, restless, betraying him. I cut him off. "No more lies. I have every word, every document, every forged signature. And now, everyone knows." For years, Robert had painted me as paranoid, weak, unfit. My own son had joined his chorus. But tonight I held the brush. Tonight, I painted the truth in colors so vivid they couldn't deny it. Mark's face drained of color. His forced bravado crumbled, leaving only fear and fury. He jabbed a finger at me, his voice breaking. "You've ruined everything!" Robert muttered again, low and sharp, as if cursing Mark for losing control. But it was too late. The mask had shattered. The truth was undeniable now. But the real collapse was yet to come. Mark destroyed himself the moment he opened his mouth. His fork clattered against the plate, the sharp clang slicing through the heavy silence. Mark's face was red, but not the kind of red that comes from embarrassment. It was the angry, blotchy flush of someone who had lost control. "You're insane!" he barked, pointing at me with a trembling hand. His finger quivered, betraying a crack in his usual confidence. "She's lying! She's always been lying!" I sat still, my hands folded neatly in front of me, though my chest thudded like a war drum. Let him unravel. Let everyone see. Inside I was whispering to myself, "Don't rise. Don't match his fire. He's burning himself alive." Robert leaned back in his chair, forcing a smug smile, though the corners of his mouth twitched downward. He tried to steady the storm with a low murmur. "Mark, calm down. Don't give her the satisfaction." His words were smooth, but the sweat gathering at his hairline betrayed him. Mark slammed his fist on the table so hard that wine sloshed over the rim of a glass, staining the white tablecloth in a spreading red blot. It looked like blood. "She manipulated this whole thing!" Mark shouted, his voice cracking mid-sentence. He laughed, too loudly, too forced. "Can't you all see it? She forged those tapes. She spliced them together. She's been plotting against me for years." I tilted my head, watching him as if he were a stranger. "Funny," I said softly, so softly everyone had to lean in. "Your voice on those recordings sounded awfully genuine." Gasps rippled around the table. The sound of silverware being set down, the scrape of chairs, the uneasy shuffling. Every eye flicked to Mark, not me. Robert's jaw tightened. He reached for Mark's shoulder, but Mark jerked away like a cornered animal. "Don't touch me!" he snapped, glaring at his supposed ally. Inside, my stomach churned. I had dreamed of this moment, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt raw, like watching my own child tear himself apart in front of strangers. Mark's voice grew louder, more frantic. "You all think she's some saint? She's not. She's poison. She made me this way." His words tangled, lost coherence. He was shouting not at me anymore, but at the ghosts in his head. "Mark!" I whispered his name, and for a split second his eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen in years, fear. Robert tried again, his voice tight, rehearsed charm faltering. "Listen, she's twisting everything. She's—" "Shut up, Robert!" Mark roared, spit flying. "You told me she wouldn't have proof!" And just like that, the mask was gone. The last thread snapped. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening. The room turned colder. The chandelier above us seemed to buzz louder. Someone at the far end of the table muttered, "Oh my God!" I watched my son, my own flesh and blood, unravel. His chest heaved, his face streaked with sweat. The arrogance he had always worn like armor had shattered, leaving something raw and pitiful beneath. "You think you've won?" He spat at me, his voice hoarse now. "You think this makes you better than me?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat locked. Robert pushed back his chair sharply. "We're done here," he muttered, though his hands shook as he adjusted his cufflink. He didn't meet my eyes. He couldn't. He trailed after Mark, who stormed out, the dining room door slamming behind them with a thunderous crack. The silence afterward was suffocating. No one moved. No one dared. I sat there, staring at the spilled wine that had bled across the table, its edges creeping like veins. It looked almost alive. Inside, I expected to feel triumph, but all I felt was a heavy, bruised sorrow. I had exposed them, yes. I had won, yes, but it was a victory carved out of bone and blood. Justice isn't clean, I thought. It's jagged. It leaves scars. The others at the table avoided my eyes. No one wanted to sit in that silence with me. The air carried the bitter tang of fear, of endings, of something unfinished. I picked up my napkin, folded it with deliberate care, and whispered to myself, "It's over." But the words rang hollow. Because deep down, I knew the collapse I'd witnessed tonight was not the end. It was only the beginning of something darker. But just when I thought it was over, I received a letter. The letter in my mailbox felt heavier than the whole betrayal. I froze when I saw it. A plain white envelope tucked between bills and catalogs, my name scrawled across the front in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. The loops were sharp, jagged, like claws scratching the page. My pulse skipped. My palms turned slick. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I just stood there in the fading light of the porch, hearing nothing but the faint creak of the mailbox hinge swaying in the wind. The world around me dimmed. The neighbor's dog barking, the hum of a car engine, all of it faded beneath the weight of that single envelope. Don't open it, I told myself. Burn it. Tear it. Forget it exists. But of course I didn't. Inside, the paper smelled of smoke and stale whiskey, Robert's signature stench. The scent hit me like a memory, dragging me back to nights I wished I could erase. My throat tightened. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter, each crease echoing too loud in the quiet of my kitchen. Robert's voice filled my head as I read. You might think you won. Cute little performance at the dinner table. Very dramatic. Everyone gasped right on cue. But you and I both know that wasn't victory. That was theater. And I never lose in the long run. Mark may have stumbled, but he's my blood more than yours. I'll raise him back up. I'll teach him how to bite harder. You think you buried secrets? I've got them all. The kind that rot families from the inside. Want me to remind you about the night in '09? Or maybe you'd like me to tell them what your husband begged me to keep quiet? I'm not finished. Not even close. Sleep lightly. I'll be watching. I stopped breathing halfway through, but my eyes still dragged across the words, each sentence like a nail driven into my chest. The bastard wasn't gone. He wasn't retreating. He was circling. My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. The edges of the paper cut into my fingers. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might crack a rib. Why couldn't he just disappear? Why couldn't this end? Mark is my blood more than yours. The line replayed in my head, over and over, like a cruel mantra. He was poisoning my son against me even from the shadows. The kitchen seemed smaller, air pressed tight. The hum of the refrigerator felt louder, oppressive. I swore I saw movement at the window, a flicker of shadow, but when I turned, there was nothing. I whispered to the empty room. You're bluffing. You're just bluffing. But deep down, I knew Robert never bluffed. Later that night, I sat in bed, the letter folded neatly on the nightstand like a loaded gun I couldn't put away. My lamp flickered once, then steadied. Every sound, the creak of the house, the whisper of wind, felt like his presence pressing closer. I thought of burning the letter. But what if I needed proof? What if the police had to see it? My mind spun in circles. The words blurred again in my memory. Sleep lightly. I'll be watching. I touched the curtains, making sure they were drawn tight. I checked the locks, front door, back door, windows, twice. My reflection in the glass looked pale, drained, someone I barely recognized. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt small. Smaller than Robert's shadow. Smaller than his menace. Still, I whispered to myself, steadying my breath. He wants me afraid. He feeds on fear. I won't give him the satisfaction. But the truth? My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The wine-stained tablecloth from that dinner was still bundled in the laundry room. I thought of the red blot spreading like blood, and now it felt like an omen. A warning I had ignored. I reached for the letter again, even though touching it made bile rise in my throat. His words pulsed like they were alive, whispering straight into my ear. And then, at the very bottom, the final line I hadn't noticed before. This isn't goodbye. This is a promise. Because Robert's last words weren't a goodbye. They were a promise. I thought victory would bring peace. I was wrong. The study was dim, lit only by the amber glow of the desk lamp. The whiskey glass sat half empty beside me, the smell clinging stubbornly to the air, like guilt that refused to leave. I thought it would dull the noise in my head, but it only sharpened it. Dad! My son's voice came from the doorway. It was low, clipped, his arms folded across his chest, his eyes never quite meeting mine. You think this is over? I wanted to answer, but the words stuck. His jaw was tight, like he was holding something back. What do you mean? I finally managed. He gave a hollow laugh. You think locking Robert's will away makes it disappear? People talk. Secrets crawl. And you let him get that close to us. The sting hit harder than the whiskey ever could. I protected this family. I snapped, more defensive than I intended. Everything I did was too late. He cut in. His voice cracked. He turned his face just enough that I caught the glisten in his eyes before he blinked it away. You didn't see him like I did. The way he'd lean in, whisper things, watch Mom when you weren't looking. The room felt colder. My fingers clenched around the glass until it trembled. Don't, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was telling him or myself. But he wasn't finished. He stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under his weight. Every night, I hear his voice, even when I sleep. And I wonder, what if he left something behind? What if this isn't done? His words dug deep, deeper than I wanted to admit. I tried to reach for him, but he flinched, stepping back. The rejection was sharper than any knife. Son, listen to me, I said softer now. Robert's gone. He can't touch us anymore. You don't believe that, he said flatly. And he was right. My wife entered then, her presence softer but no less strained. She carried the look of someone holding herself together with threadbare strings. Her smile was forced, her eyes shadowed. Enough, she whispered. Both of you. Her hands trembled as she touched my arm. We need to move on. We have to. I studied her face, the cracks in her calm, the twitch at the corner of her lips, the way her fingers lingered a moment too long before pulling away. She was pretending for us, but she was broken too. Do you think it's that easy? I asked her, my voice catching. No, she admitted, eyes glassy. But if we don't try, he wins. Her words were brave, but her body betrayed her. The faint shiver, the quick glance over her shoulder at the darkened hallway, as if expecting Robert's shadow to step through. Silence fell heavy after she left the room, leaving me and my son staring at the space she'd occupied. Do you trust her? He asked suddenly. The question sliced through me. Of course I do. He shook his head slowly. You didn't see how she looked at him sometimes. Like she wasn't sure where to stand. Anger flared in my chest. Don't you dare. I'm just saying, he pressed, his voice shaking. You think scars fade, but they don't. They wait. And when you least expect it. His words cut off, swallowed by the sound of the old grandfather clock striking midnight. Each chime echoed like a warning. I leaned back in the chair, the leather creaking beneath me. My fingers brushed the edge of the locked drawer where Robert's will lay buried. Cold metal, cold comfort. I could almost hear his voice again, smooth, mocking, dripping with secrets only he and I knew. I drained the last of the whiskey, the burn searing down my throat, but it didn't wash the taste of dread away. My son lingered in the doorway, his silhouette rigid. You can lock papers, he said quietly, but you can't lock shadows. And then he left me there, alone with the silence, the whiskey, and the scars Robert had carved into us. Because scars don't fade. They wait.